The ferry creaked and groaned as it nudged against the aged wooden dock, its worn planks slick from the persistent coastal rain. A thick curtain of fog pressed in on every side, swallowing the town of Ravenshade like an unseen tide, muffling sounds and cloaking the narrow streets in eerie silence. Elena Gray tightened the collar of her coat, shivering despite the layers she wore. The salt air bit at her cheeks and filled her lungs with its raw, briny scent. She stepped off the ferry alone, her boots echoing softly as they met the wet wood. The town was small and the people smaller still, guarded, tight-lipped, shadows moving cautiously between doorways and alleyways. No one welcomed her. No one watched. The only light came from the weak glow of gas lamps flickering in the damp evening air. Elena's gaze was fixed on the lighthouse, a solitary tower perched on the cliff's jagged edge, its beacon long extinguished. She had arrived at the invitation of a mystery she could not resist: the disappearance of Arthur Vance, the lighthouse keeper who had vanished without a trace 3 months earlier. His absence had left the town trembling beneath a cloak of superstition and fear. Weeks ago, an unmarked parcel had arrived on Elena's doorstep. A worn leather-bound journal filled with Arthur's careful handwriting, strange symbols, and sketches of lanterns surrounded by crashing waves. It had no return address, no sender, but something about it spoke directly to her restless soul. As she walked the narrow cobblestone streets toward the Raven's Rest Inn, the journal heavy in her satchel, the fog thickened, swallowing the outlines of buildings and softening the edges of the world. The sea's constant roar was a distant but relentless heartbeat beneath it all. The inn was a squat stone building with smoke curling from its crooked chimney. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of peat fires and old wood. The patrons were few, their faces weathered and wary as they glanced up at the newcomer. The innkeeper, a gaunt man with pale eyes and a tired smile, approached her and slid a small brass key across the counter. Its surface was etched with a lantern surrounded by curling waves, the very symbol Elena had seen drawn repeatedly in Arthur's journal. "No one's been up to the lighthouse since Arthur left," he said quietly. "You'll need this." She took the key, feeling its unexpected weight, and nodded. Her fingers trembled slightly. This key was her only invitation, or perhaps her only warning. That night, Elena pored over the journal's cryptic entries by candlelight, tracing the looping letters and strange symbols, piecing together a puzzle she barely understood. The writing spoke of light and shadow, of tides that whispered secrets, and a presence watching from beneath the waves. Sleep was elusive. Outside, the fog pressed against the windows, a silent tide swallowing the town whole. Morning came with an eerie stillness. Elena wrapped herself in her heaviest coat and set out for the lighthouse, the brass key burning cold in her pocket. The path wound steeply through tangled brambles and ancient pine trees, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth and pine resin. A storm was gathering on the horizon, dark clouds blotting out the sun. The lighthouse towered above her as she emerged from the forest, a stoic sentinel standing guard against the restless sea. Its stone walls were weathered by centuries of wind and salt, the glass of its lantern room cracked and grimy. The door was heavy iron, worn and rusted. Elena inserted the brass key. The lock resisted, groaning as it gave way. The door swung open, revealing a narrow spiral staircase curling upward into darkness. With a deep breath, she stepped inside. The air smelled of salt and old oil lamps. Dust motes danced in the shafts of fading light filtering through the tower's windows. Her footsteps echoed hollowly as she climbed, the iron railing cold beneath her fingers. Halfway up, a door interrupted the climb. Elena pushed it open into a small room, the keeper's quarters. The space was cramped but cozy, filled with bookshelves bowed under the weight of ancient volumes and sea charts. A battered desk stood beneath a window overlooking the tumultuous sea, its surface cluttered with scattered papers and half-burned candles. On the desk lay Arthur's journal, open to a page filled with intricate sketches. Lanterns casting beams of light over roiling waves, spirals resembling whirlpools, and strange symbols that seemed to pulse with unseen energy. Elena's fingers brushed the ink, feeling the urgency in Arthur's hurried script. Suddenly, the door creaked shut behind her. She spun around, heart racing, but the room was empty. Only the silence remained, thick, waiting as if the walls themselves held their breath. She forced herself to return to the journal, tracing the symbols, hoping for answers. Hours passed as the storm outside unleashed its fury. rain lashing the windows, wind howling like a chorus of lost souls. Elena found herself drawn to a hidden compartment beneath the desk. Her hands trembled as she pried it open, revealing a small, rusted tin box. Inside lay a faded photograph of Arthur and a woman she didn't recognize, a bundle of dried seaweed tied with a crimson ribbon, and a folded piece of parchment sealed with wax. Breaking the seal, Elena unfolded the parchment. The ink was faded but legible, a letter addressed to the one who seeks the light. It spoke of an ancient pact between the town and the sea, a promise made long ago to keep a dark force imprisoned beneath the waves, bound by the light of the lantern. Arthur's final warning was clear. The light must never be extinguished or the darkness would rise again. Elena's mind raced. The disappearance, the journal, the strange symbols, it all pointed to something far greater than she had imagined. The storm raged on, but Elena was no longer afraid. She knew her path was set. She would uncover the truth. The storm had passed, leaving behind a brittle calm that settled like a fragile breath over Ravenshade. Elena stood at the edge of the cliffs, the restless sea stretching below her, endless and brooding. The waves crashed against jagged rocks, each roar a reminder of the secrets buried beneath the dark waters. The letter she found in Arthur's room weighed heavily in her mind. A pact with the sea, an ancient binding. The idea seemed both fantastical and terrifying. She wondered what darkness Arthur had tried to keep at bay, and why he had disappeared before his task was complete. As dawn's pale light filtered through the lingering mist, Elena made her way back to the town. The streets were awakening slowly, and the few townsfolk she passed still avoided her gaze. It was as if the very ground beneath their feet held whispered warnings. Her destination was the small library nestled near the square, a dusty place filled with forgotten tomes and weathered maps. If any answers were hidden in history, she hoped they would be there. Inside, the air smelled of aging paper and mildew. The librarian, a thin woman with spectacles perched on the edge of her nose, looked up as Elena entered. "You're the one asking after Arthur Vance," she said softly. "Not many do." Elena nodded. "I found his journal. I think there's more to his story than the town knows." The librarian led her to a corner where a shelf sagged under the weight of old books. "The lighthouse has always been tied to strange tales," she whispered. "Stories of lights seen beneath the waves, voices carried on the wind. Some say the sea itself watches, waiting." Elena pulled out a faded leather-bound volume. The pages detailed legends of a dark force trapped beneath the ocean, an ancient entity called the Drowned King, bound by light and shadow. The pact was made centuries ago by the town's ancestors, using the lighthouse's beacon as a seal. Her fingers trembled as she read. Suddenly, a chill ran down her spine. The librarian's eyes darkened. "You must be careful. Some secrets are meant to stay buried." Elena left the library, clutching the book like a lifeline. Her thoughts churned, the journal, the letter, the legends. Everything pointed to something dangerous lurking just beyond sight. That evening, she returned to the lighthouse, determined to explore further. The brass key still hung heavy in her pocket as she climbed the spiraling stairs once more. This time, she reached the lantern room, a dusty chamber high above the sea, with shattered glass windows and a rusted lantern at its center. Elena's breath caught as she noticed a faded inscription carved into the stone floor. "Light alone can bind the darkness." The words echoed in her mind, a solemn warning. Carefully, she examined the rusted lantern. Inside, she found traces of a strange, shimmering substance, something like powdered glass mixed with salt. Her fingers brushed it lightly, and a sudden warmth spread through her palm. The lantern flickered faintly as if awakening. Startled, Elena stepped back. The room grew colder, shadows lengthening unnaturally. Outside, the sea churned beneath an overcast sky, and the lighthouse shuddered as if breathing. She realized then that the light was not just a beacon for ships. It was a guardian, a seal against something waiting beneath the waves. Elena's resolve hardened. She would uncover the truth and protect the town no matter the cost. But as she turned to leave, a soft, almost imperceptible whisper brushed her ear, carried on the salt-tinged air. "Help us." The whisper lingered, fading as quickly as it had come, but Elena felt its weight pressing on her heart. She stood frozen in the lantern room, the cold seeping into her bones. The storm had left the air raw, but this chill was different, heavier, as if the very walls bore a living sorrow. Her thoughts raced. Was it her imagination, a trick of the wind? Or was there truly something calling from beneath the waves? Determined to find answers, she descended the spiral staircase and stepped into the keeper's quarters once more. The journal lay where she had left it, but something had changed. A page she hadn't noticed before now lay open, revealing a hastily scrawled note. The light dims, the binding weakens. Seek the lantern's twin. Only together can the darkness be held. Elena frowned, turning the page carefully. No mention of this twin lantern appeared anywhere else in the journal. What could it mean? She wrapped her coat tighter and headed outside. The sky had darkened again, clouds swirling low. The town seemed even quieter now, the fog creeping back in like a silent tide. Elena made her way toward the harbor where the old shipyard lay abandoned. Rusted cranes and broken masts jutted from the mist, remnants of a long-forgotten past. She hoped to find clues here, perhaps something Arthur had left behind. As she walked, a figure emerged from the fog. An elderly woman, her face lined with age and sorrow, approached slowly. Her eyes, sharp and piercing, seemed to see through Elena's very soul. "You shouldn't be here," the woman said, voice low and trembling. "The sea takes what it wants and it doesn't give back." "I'm looking for answers," Elena replied. "About Arthur. About the light." The woman nodded slowly, then reached into her cloak, pulling out a small, weathered box. She held it out, trembling. "This belonged to the last keeper before Arthur," she whispered. "It's the twin lantern." Elena took the box carefully, her fingers brushing against the cold metal latch. Inside, nestled in worn velvet, lay a lantern similar to the one in the lighthouse. Smaller but intricately carved, with symbols matching those in the journal. "Why now?" Elena asked. "Why bring this to me?" "Because the darkness stirs," the woman said, eyes darkening. "And the pact weakens. If the light goes out, we all drown." Elena's mind reeled. The twin lantern, a key to the mystery, a safeguard she hadn't known existed. She had to understand how to use it, how to rekindle the light's power. That night, back at the inn, Elena studied the twin lantern alongside Arthur's journal. The symbols glowed faintly in the dim candlelight, pulsing like a heartbeat. She realized that together the two lanterns formed a pattern. A map, perhaps, or a code. Hours slipped by as she traced the lines, piecing together a ritual, a binding spell tied to the ancient pact. But the more she uncovered, the more the shadows seemed to close in. Strange noises echoed through the inn. Footsteps in empty corridors, whispers carried on the wind, and the distant sound of something moving beneath the waves. Elena's resolve hardened. She would face whatever darkness awaited. The lanterns were her only hope. The night pressed close around the Raven's Rest Inn, wrapping the small town of Ravenshade in a suffocating silence broken only by the distant crash of waves against the cliffs. Elena sat by the hearth, the twin lanterns before her glowing softly with an ethereal light, casting flickering shadows that danced on the walls like restless spirits. Her fingers traced the intricate carvings on the smaller lantern, feeling the cold metal pulse faintly beneath her touch. She flipped through Arthur's journal again, searching for any mention of the ritual she had glimpsed in the cryptic sketches. The words swirled in her mind like the fog outside, elusive yet persistent. A sudden knock at the door startled her. Heart pounding, Elena rose and opened it to find the town librarian, the thin woman with the spectacles. "You shouldn't be alone tonight," the librarian said quietly, stepping inside. "There's talk in Ravenshade. Whispers of the darkness growing stronger." Elena nodded, gesturing toward the lanterns. "I found this, the twin lantern. Arthur's journal hints at a ritual to keep the darkness at bay. But I don't know how." The librarian sighed, settling near the fire. "The pact was forged by light and shadow, a balance that must never be broken. If one fades, the other consumes." She produced an ancient leather-bound tome from beneath her cloak and opened it carefully. The pages were brittle but the ink still legible, describing an old rite performed at the full moon, a ceremony to renew the binding. The ritual requires both lanterns, fire from the heart of the sea, and words spoken in the old tongue, she explained. "It is dangerous but necessary." Elena felt a chill as she absorbed the weight of the librarian's words. The full moon was only days away. Time was running out. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. The whispers returned, more urgent now, threading through her dreams like a cold current. Faces formed in the fog, pale, desperate eyes reaching out from beneath the waves. Morning came gray and heavy. Elena packed the journal, the twin lantern, and the old tome and set out toward the cliffs. The ritual had to be performed at the lighthouse, where the original pact was sealed. The path was slippery with recent rain, and the wind tugged at her coat as she climbed. The sea roared beneath, wild and unforgiving. As she reached the lantern room, she felt the weight of centuries pressing down. Elena arranged the lanterns side by side, the glow merging into a brilliant beam that cut through the morning mist. She opened the tome, her fingers trembling as she read aloud the ancient words, guttural and melodic. A sudden gust swept through the room, extinguishing the flames. Darkness rushed in, thick and cold. Elena's heart pounded as a shadow coalesced before her eyes. A shape of shifting water and smoke, eyes burning like embers. "You cannot hold the light forever," it whispered. "The sea will claim all." But Elena stood firm, raising the lanterns higher. The light flared, pushing back the darkness with blinding intensity. The shadow writhed, screaming in fury, then dissolved into mist. Exhausted but resolute, Elena knew the battle was far from over. The darkness would return, stronger and more cunning. She descended the lighthouse steps, the twin lanterns safe in her pack. The town awaited, fragile, hopeful, but unaware of the war stirring beneath the waves. The days that followed the ritual passed in a strange blur for Elena. The weight of the twin lanterns in her pack was a constant reminder of the fragile balance she was charged to maintain. Ravenshade itself seemed suspended in a wary calm, the townspeople retreating behind shuttered windows and whispered prayers. But Elena knew the silence was deceiving. The sea, relentless and patient, was preparing to reclaim what had long been bound beneath its surface. One evening, as twilight bled into the horizon, Elena stood once more on the cliffs near the lighthouse. The lanterns, though dim, glowed faintly under the gathering clouds. She sensed a shift in the air, a tension that set her nerves on edge. Behind her, footsteps approached. She turned to find the elderly woman from the harbor, the one who had first given her the twin lantern. "The darkness is not what you think," the woman said softly. "It's not a monster but a force, ancient, wild, and bound by fear." Elena's brow furrowed. "Then what is it? And why does it want to be free?" The woman's gaze drifted toward the turbulent sea. "Because it is part of us. Part of the world's old magic. The pact was made to contain it, yes, but also to keep balance. Light and shadow intertwined. Break that and all is lost." As the wind whipped through the trees, Elena felt the truth of the woman's words settle deep inside her. This was no simple battle between good and evil. It was a dance of elements, a war of existence itself. Suddenly, a cry shattered the evening stillness. From the village below, smoke rose in thin plumes, and frantic shouts echoed against the cliffs. Without hesitation, Elena raced down the rocky path toward Ravenshade. Flames licked the sky as the old shipyard burned, its skeletal remains glowing orange against the darkening sea. Townsfolk scrambled to douse the fire, faces pale and terrified. Elena pushed through the crowd, searching for answers. "Who did this?" she demanded. "No one saw," a fisherman whispered. "But some say the sea took it," a warning. Her heart pounded. The darkness was no longer hidden beneath the waves. It was spilling over, reaching for the shore. That night, Elena studied the journal and the old tome by candlelight, searching for a way to strengthen the bond. She realized the ritual would have to be repeated, but on a grander scale, involving the entire town, their collective will, and the light from both lanterns united. The full moon was only hours away. As midnight approached, Elena stood once more in the lantern room, the twin lanterns burning bright in the growing darkness. The townsfolk gathered below, their voices rising in a chant taught by the librarian, ancient words binding light and shadow. The air crackled with energy as the ritual unfolded, a fragile beacon against the encroaching night. Suddenly, a surge of cold swept through the tower. The sea roared louder and the sky split with lightning. Shadows writhed and reached through the windows, but the lanterns flared brighter, pushing back the tide of darkness. Elena's voice rang out, steady and strong as the final words were spoken. A blinding light erupted, and the shadows screamed before dissolving into the night. When dawn broke, Ravenshade was silent but safe for now. Elena knew this was only the beginning. The pact was fragile and the sea's secret would demand more. But she was ready. The morning after the ritual dawned with an eerie stillness. The sun struggled to pierce through the thick, low-hanging clouds, casting a muted glow over Ravenshade. Elena stood on the cliffs, gazing down at the restless sea, the twin lanterns now resting safely in the small leather satchel at her side. Though the darkness had receded, the threat had not vanished. Somewhere beneath the waves, the ancient force lingered, biding its time. She recalled the elderly woman's words, that the darkness was not merely a malevolent spirit but a vital part of the world's balance. It was wild, untamed, and bound by fear. A force that could consume or coexist depending on the strength of the pact. Elena's resolve had deepened. She realized her role was not only to keep the light burning but to understand the shadows that danced alongside it. Over the next few days, she sought the counsel of the librarian and the elderly woman, delving deeper into the old tomes and forgotten lore. They revealed fragments of history lost to time, of the town's founders, the original keepers of the lantern, and the sacrifices made to maintain the fragile equilibrium. One night, Elena dreamt of the sea, dark, vast, and whispering secrets in a language older than time. Faces appeared in the waves, both sorrowful and fierce, calling for release or mercy. She awoke with a start, her heart pounding. The dream was a message, a plea, or perhaps a warning. Determined to act, Elena gathered the townsfolk in the square beneath the lighthouse. She told them what she had learned, of the pact, the twin lanterns, and the ritual to keep the darkness contained. Many listened in silence, fear and disbelief mingling in their eyes. But some, like the fisherman Thomas and the blacksmith Merrick, stepped forward, pledging their support. Together, they prepared for another ceremony, one that would require not only light but trust and courage. On the night of the second full moon, the town gathered around the lighthouse, the air thick with anticipation and unease. Elena stood at the center, the twin lanterns glowing in her hands as she led the ritual. The townsfolk joined voices in the ancient chant, their breath visible in the cold night air. Light and shadow wove together in a delicate dance, the balance shifting with every word spoken. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath their feet. From the depths of the sea, a towering shape rose. A figure cloaked in darkness, eyes gleaming with ancient power. The crowd gasped, but Elena held firm, raising the lanterns higher. The light flared, cutting through the shadow with searing brilliance. The figure let out a deafening roar, then dissolved into a cascade of shimmering droplets that fell harmlessly into the ocean. Silence fell once more, heavy but hopeful. Elena knew the fight was far from over. The sea's secret was vast and deep, but so was her determination. As dawn painted the sky with soft hues of pink and gold, she looked toward the horizon, ready to face whatever tide came next. The days that followed the second ritual brought a strange peace to Ravenshade, but Elena sensed it was fragile, like ice over dark water. The sea's restless murmurs continued, a low hum beneath the wind and waves. One afternoon, while examining the lanterns and their inscriptions again, Elena found a hidden compartment in the smaller one. Inside was a folded parchment, brittle with age. Carefully unfolding it, she discovered a map, a cryptic chart showing the coastline and several marked spots offshore, connected by faint lines like a constellation. Her pulse quickened. Could these be places where the Pact's power was anchored beneath the sea? Determined to learn more, she sought out Merrick, the blacksmith, known not only for his skill with metal but also for his knowledge of local legends. By the firelight in Marek's workshop, Elena spread the map before him. His brow furrowed as he traced the lines with a calloused finger. "These spots," he murmured, "are said to be the resting places of ancient relics, stones infused with magic to bind the sea's darkness." Elena nodded. If the lanterns are the surface guardians, these relics might be the roots. If they fail, the whole pact could unravel. Merrick looked up, his eyes fierce. "Then we need to find them before the darkness does." They planned a small expedition. A boat, a crew, and a night under the moonlight to dive at the marked sites. That evening, Elena stood at the harbor, watching the waves glimmer in the moonlight. The town seemed quiet, almost holding its breath. As they set out on the creaking boat, a cold mist rolled in, wrapping the sea in a silvery veil. Merrick, Thomas, and two other villagers accompanied her, their faces pale but resolute. The first dive was at a rocky outcrop marked by a lone, weathered lighthouse beacon long since extinguished. Elena slipped beneath the waves, the water icy and dark. Her lanterns were sealed safely on the boat, their glow a distant promise. Underwater, the shapes of ancient stones lay scattered across the seabed, faint runes glowing softly. Elena's fingers brushed one of the stones, and a pulse of energy shot through her, warm and alive. Suddenly, a shadow moved, swift and silent, darting just beyond her vision. She surfaced with a gasp, heart racing. Back on the boat, the group exchanged uneasy looks. The sea was watching. At the next dive site, deeper and more treacherous, they found a submerged cave. Inside, more stones arranged in a circle, their light dim but steady. Elena's breath echoed in her diving mask as she reached out. The moment her hand touched the central stone, a low rumble vibrated through the water. The sea stirred violently and something enormous shifted beneath them. The boat rocked as the water around them churned. Merrick shouted warnings and they scrambled aboard as waves lashed the deck. That night, back on shore, Elena pored over the journal and tome, piecing together the significance of the stones. They were more than anchors. They were living seals, linked in a network beneath the ocean's surface. If even one were to fail, the darkness could slip through. Elena looked out toward the sea, the weight of her responsibility settling heavy on her shoulders. The tide was rising, and with it, the secrets of the deep.